The story I'm about to tell you is completely true, and it still sends a shiver down my spine every time I think about it. It all started in my old apartment, a creaky pre-war building with more character than I could handle. I thought I'd found a gem, cheap rent, in a decent neighborhood. But from the first week, things were off. It began with small stuff, the kind of things you can easily explain away. Keys not being where I left them, the TV turning on by itself in the middle of the night. Classic spooky stuff. Then it escalated. I'd hear faint whispers when I was home alone, like someone was talking just on the edge of hearing. The air would suddenly go ice cold in one specific corner of the living room, even on the hottest summer days. The final straw was the shadow. I was up late working on my laptop, and I saw it out of the corner of my eye. A tall, slender figure just standing in the doorway to my bedroom. It was darker than the surrounding darkness, a void in the shape of a person. My heart hammered against my ribs. I slowly turned my head, and it was gone. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I spent the whole night with all the lights on, huddled on the sofa, clutching a kitchen knife. I know, it sounds dramatic, but I was terrified. That was it. I broke my lease the very next day. I didn't care about losing my security deposit. My sanity was worth more than $1,000. I packed up my life in a whirlwind of boxes and tape, feeling a huge sense of relief with every item I carried out of that cursed apartment. I was finally free. My new place was a complete contrast. It was a modern building, bright, airy, and squeaky clean. It had that new paint smell that promises a fresh start. For the first 2 weeks, it was bliss. Pure, uninterrupted peace. I slept soundly for the first time in months. I started to think the whole thing had just been a product of stress and an old building as strange noises. I even laughed about it with a friend over the phone, calling myself paranoid. I was so sure I had left the problem behind. I was so wrong. The first sign that something had followed me was subtle. I was unpacking the last of my boxes, the ones with old books and sentimental junk. I pulled out a small, antique music box my grandmother had given me. I hadn't opened it in years. As I set it on my new bookshelf, it started playing its tinny little tune all by itself. My blood ran cold. The melody, once a comfort, now sounded sinister. I slammed it shut, my hands trembling. Coincidence, I told myself. It must have gotten jostled in the move. But I knew, deep down I knew, the feeling was back. That same heavy, watchful presence I felt in the old apartment began to settle over my new one. The cold spots returned, this time migrating around the apartment, never staying in one place for long. One evening, I was cooking dinner, listening to a podcast. The audio suddenly cut out, replaced by a blast of static. Then a voice, a low, guttural whisper, saying a single word. My name. It was so clear, so close. It was as if someone was standing right behind me, their lips next to my ear. I spun around, spatula in hand, my heart trying to escape my chest. Of course, no one was there. The podcast resumed as if nothing had happened. Was I going crazy? That's what I kept asking myself. I started documenting everything. I kept a detailed journal, writing down every strange occurrence with the date and time. The disembodied whispers, the objects moving on their own, the overwhelming feeling of being watched. One night, I woke up to the sound of scratching. It was coming from inside my closet. A slow, rhythmic scrape against the wood. I was paralyzed with fear, lying there in the dark, listening to it for what felt like hours. I didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe. When the sun finally came up, I worked up the courage to open the closet door. There, on the inside of the door, were 3 long, deep gouges in the paint. They were fresh. The wood shavings were still on the floor. That's when I realized this wasn't tied to a place. It was tied to me. It wasn't a haunted house. I was the one being haunted. The shadow figure started appearing again, too. I'd catch glimpses of it in reflective surfaces, in the dark screen of my phone, in the bathroom mirror after a shower, and the window at night. It was always just for a second, a fleeting, terrifying image of that tall, dark shape. It never did anything, it just watched. Its presence was a constant weight on my soul. I became a shell of my former self. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I was jumpy and on edge all the time. My friends and family grew worried. They suggested therapy, a sleep study. They tried to find rational explanations for everything I was experiencing. Gas leaks, faulty wiring, infrasound. I appreciated their concern, but I knew what was happening was real. Desperate, I started researching. I spent countless hours online, reading about paranormal attachments, entities that latch onto a person instead of a location. I learned that these attachments can sometimes be formed during moments of intense emotional distress or trauma, creating a sort of spiritual vulnerability. Looking back, I realized the haunting in my old apartment started shortly after a really difficult period in my life. Had I unknowingly opened a door to something? I found online communities of people who had experienced similar things. It was a relief to know I wasn't alone, but their stories were just as terrifying as mine. Many of them had been dealing with their attachments for years, some for their entire lives. I tried everything they suggested: burning sage, lining my doorways with salt, wearing protective charms. I had a priest come and bless the apartment. For a day or two after each attempt, things would quiet down. The air would feel lighter, the presence would recede. But it always came back, sometimes with more intensity, as if it were angry that I had tried to get rid of it. After the blessing, for instance, every single cabinet door and drawer in my kitchen was thrown open in the middle of the night. It was like a poltergeist tantrum. I was at my wit's end. I couldn't move again. What would be the point? It would just follow me. I felt trapped, not by walls, but by this invisible parasite that was feeding off my fear. One night, I decided I'd had enough of being the victim. I was sitting in the dark, and I could feel it in the room with me. The air was thick and cold. Instead of cowering, I stood up and I spoke into the empty room. I said, "I know you're here. I'm not afraid of you anymore. This is my life, and you are not welcome in it. You have to leave." I said it with a conviction I didn't even know I had. My voice didn't even tremble. For a long moment, there was just silence, and then the strangest thing happened. I felt a shift. It's hard to describe, but it was like a drop in pressure, a release. The oppressive weight in the room lifted. The air warmed up. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was truly alone in my apartment. It's been 6 months since that night. The activity hasn't stopped completely. Every now and then, I'll hear a faint whisper or find something moved, but it's different now. It's weak, infrequent, like a fading echo. The shadow is gone. The terrifying physical manifestations have stopped. I don't know what it was or why it attached itself to me, but I learned something important. Sometimes the source of our strength is the one thing these things can't touch. My fear was its food source, and when I took that away, I starved it. I took my life back. I still sleep with a nightlight on, and I'll probably never be completely comfortable in the dark again, but I'm not a victim anymore. I moved, the ghost followed, but in the end, I was the one who forced it to move on. Thanks for listening to my story. If you have any similar experiences, please share them in the comments below. It helps to know you're not alone. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more strange tales.